time to take a look at stories making the headlines in Nigerian newspapers. Joining me via Skype is lawyer and social development advocate Jide Ologun. Thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast.
Good morning, Veronica.
All right, let's head straight to the papers now, and I begin with the blueprint. Ahead court ruling on Edo primaries. APC hires dons, lawyers to screen Obaseki, Ize-Iyamu, others. Party lacks power to query school admission requirement. Governor's attack on direct primaries illogical, Ize-Iyamu. 3 political parties yet to notify INEC. And to the front page of the national economy, COVID-19, 70% local content in all sectors still feasible. Federal government. We'll be looking at that story shortly. And to the Daily Trust now. Boko Haram kills 69 people in Borno village. On the front page of the Leadership newspaper, lawyers, CSOs divided over special court for rapists. First ladies to brave governors as women protest rising rape cases. Man 35 to be arraigned over rape of own daughter. And on the front page of the News Direct, Presidency 2023. No Cold War between us, Tinubu, Aregbesola insist. Mandate group, Justice Forum banned. I know those peddling rumor of war, Aregbesola. And finally, on the front page of the Daily Times, no going back on Executive Order number 10. Federal government says it will work with governors on modalities for effective implementation of order. All right, let's go back to the story on the front page of the national economy. COVID-19, talking about the government looking at generating 70% of local content in the oil sector in the next 7 years, especially in the midst of the uncertainties and the instabilities that has been prompted by the COVID-19 pandemic. Jide Ologun, I wonder how optimistic you are about this.
In terms of making projections, I'm quite optimistic. And if you look at the Nigerian Oil and Gas Development Law of 2010, it says about local content as a quantum or composite value added or created, in Nigeria and through the utilization of Nigerian resources and services in the petroleum industry. We have the petroleum industry, we have the resources, the raw materials. And what is expected is that if we enhance local capacity, we will be able to create development of indigenous capability through, engagement without compromising quality, health, and safety. And that is about the position of the law. And what local content seeks to achieve is to build a workforce that is skilled and build a competitive supplier base. But if you ask me on how we have managed our resources till now, from 1956 when we discovered oil in commercial quantity in Oloibiri, and if today we are a poor nation, that means we have grossly mismanaged these resources. And in making reference to other countries that also came up with policies to maximize their resources in terms of oil and gas. You talk about Norway, you talk about Malaysia, and they have greatly benefited from their oil and gas wealth. They have used it to transform their economies in terms of local farms, increased participation, infrastructure development, job creation, and backward linkage development. And I may be tempted to ask this morning that if my great nation spent 11 trillion naira on fuel subsidy in 6 years, otherwise known as under recovery, you can imagine that 11 trillion naira invested in local capacity. But as we discussed this morning, my country still exports crude oil to somewhere outside the country, creating jobs here, developing their economies, and bring the refined oil fuel back to Nigeria and losing some of the byproducts of this great resource. So if we are projecting that in 7 years' time, we are rising up to 70%, it's a good development. But then I also did a study on the local content in Nigeria. And it was discovered that the local value created in Nigeria oil and gas sector as a consequence of this local content policy is lower than expected target. And what this portends for us is that we need to, the implementation of the policy needs to be closely monitored to ensure its efficacy towards increased economic development. It's all about developing our economy, whether you refer to it in the electricity sector or oil and gas or in the agricultural sector. So we really need to quickly generate wealth in this country. And we thank God for COVID-19 that is making nations to focus inwards. So for me, with serious and dedicated, resourceful leadership, we can even achieve that in less than 7 years, but we have to be deliberate about it. I've made reference to the UAE, what they did with their oil and gas.
All right, before we look at our deliberateness at achieving this, let's quickly, I'd like for you to touch on how effectively or successfully we've been able to manage the $200 million invested or intervention fund that was put in place for local content generation. How successfully have we been able to manage that?
If we have successfully managed this, I mean, I'm talking as a business person now, the results will show in wealth. But if today we still go around the world borrowing money, I mean, if my father died a borrower, I would be ashamed. But he didn't die a borrower. My father was not owing anybody when he died. So let's escalate that to the level of a nation. Why should we be a massively borrowing nation when we have all these resources? I mean, you are talking about the intervention in that sector. What about the intervention in electricity? I mean, I've disclosed here from reports that we spent about $20 billion in about 20 years on electricity. Do we have the electricity? Do you know how much you have spent on the Mambila project? And the Mambila Dam was constructed in 1982. That was during the Second Republic when Alhaji Shehu Shagari was the president. And today we are still discussing this project. We are not even talking about the steel rolling mill. So we have a serious problem. What you look out for are the results. And if today we are the capital of poverty, then we have grossly mismanaged the resources of this country, both generated, and borrowed, whatever the case may be. But my joy is in the word of Mary Pickford. Mary Pickford said, "You may have a fresh start any moment you choose. For this that we call failure, it's not a falling down, but a staying down." So if Nigeria decides to remain in this template we are without a national vision, particularly maybe just political vision when people come into office and start moving in different directions, if we are consistent on where we are going, we get there. We still have the resources. We still have our oil and gas. I mean, let me ask this simple question that will open our eyes. Did we fly anybody out of this country in respect of this COVID-19? Are people not being treated and released from the hospital? So we need to develop local capacity and make sure it benefits the people. That is the essence of wealth. The wealth of a king is defined by the wealth of the subject. So if we still have serious poverty in the land, and we have the largest reserve of proven gas in Africa, we are the largest producer of oil and gas in Africa, then we have to keep moving towards changing that paradigm. Indeed, we've not been wise with our resources.
All right, we are looking to derive more value in the country from domesticating refining, domicile manufacturing, extract value from gas. Although there has been several calls for the reworking of our refineries, ensuring that the refineries pick up over the years. If we are to do this now, how will this reposition Nigerian operators upstream, downstream, whichever way?
When you talk about human capacity, I think Nigeria has the best human capacity in the world. But do we engage them? Look at this. Look at the health sector. Many Nigerians have come out to say we have solutions, but they are ignored. We have been so tied to this foreign mentality. And let me tell us, there is a great nation in the world that is powerful in IT. You know what they do? When they even get hackers, instead of dealing with them like criminals, they engage their brain. I mean, we have claimed to have arrested illegal refiners in the Niger Delta. Why don't you pull these guys together, refine them, send them for training? I've said it, why don't you come to the computer village in Lagos here, gather about 300 brains, train them, even if you must go and train them abroad, and develop capacity. Let me ask this question. When we even bring Chinese to Nigeria to renovate our airport, construct the rail system and things like that, don't they engage Nigerians that work with them? And this morning, I'm throwing a challenge on the table. My great nation should go and study the local content policy of Qatar. Qatar allows expatriates to come in, but they give them a timeline within which they must complete whatever they are doing and transfer that capacity to local indigenes. And that is what we are saying. So if we decide to rise up today and engage and enhance our local capacity, we'll save so much money and be able to develop the country. But having said that, we must first come to the point of really uniting as a nation, that we are going as one, because as long as that is not there, all efforts will be wasted. I can imagine now that a new government comes up in the future and begins to reverse the system that is in place. For example, you can know now that the herders, the headsmen are the ones on the front line of really being projected. What about if another government comes up later and begins to reverse that structure? You know, so we need to be consistent.
All right.
And I put this to the National Assembly. All parts of this country are represented in the National Assembly. So they must represent our interests and put us in the line of consistent national development according to Section 16 of the Nigerian Constitution, 1999.
Jide Ologun, we have to leave the conversation here now. Thank you so much for speaking with us.